Hello, 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 beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the USL show. We are glad to be back where we have once again crowned another champion. It's the same champion as you always think it's going to be. It was, of course, Omaha, but we will get into that in a little bit. Lots of stuff to discuss this week. Team coming in, apparently. Two teams going out. And one champion's been named. Another one's going to join the fray for 2024, but we'll get into that in a moment. John, how are you?
Yeah, doing really well. Kind of packed show, a lot to talk about, but yeah, happy to be here on another Tuesday.
Phil, how are you?
I'm good. I am, excited by. I think there is a sweet sort of symmetry in Dom Casciato winning USL League One and Locomotive finishing bottom of the championship. I don't know exactly what that is, but I'm choosing to take comfort in it rather than fight against it.
I'll talk about that in a second, Phil, because I was going to talk about how once again we are souls that are just interlinked at all times. Ryan, how are you?
Doing well, yeah. This is a PSA to any football club who isn't yet on Blue Sky. Go out and just claim an account, or else you'll get weirdos who are making Mario memes out there impersonating professional teams. So even if you're not going to post anything, just go out and put your name on it and prevent something like that from happening, as we saw with just search San Diego FC and you'll see everything that I'm talking about.
Encouraging people not to join unions. It's what we love to see.
Is there any world where we can just start claiming all the teams before they can get on, so they have to pay us for them? That's the way we raise money.
I would love a Locomotive Blue. I should start the Locomotive Blue Sky account right now. Actually, hold on.
Guys, you need this. You need this more than I do.
We're gonna go squat, so come on.
Give me one second.
In exchange for giving up the Locomotive Blue Sky to the team, would you bargain for you get to manage one game next year?
Absolutely. As long as they pay for airfare.
Wilmer, we have a great idea. Well, before we get too far gone, let's go ahead and thank our wonderful patrons. We got Matt Cat Peel, Timothy Meadows, Andrew Towsley, Olive the Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MOS, NFResh 30, Tim Knox, Rion Lacara, Stephen Howard, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Telford, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Aaron J., Frank Anthony, John Hunt, and Harry Austin. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. We really appreciate it. Always just super thankful for what you guys do. I was going to talk to Phil, but I think he's actually making the El Paso Blue Sky account. So So before we can get into us talking to Phil, because we do need to talk about his former coach.
I just need a second. No, I'm in the pocket. Hey, I'm engaged.
We have 2 minutes and 14 seconds of filibuster because, hey, listen, Union Omaha just won the USL League One final with a 3-0 win over Spokane Velocity. And boy, was it it was a fun final, to be honest. There was just a lot going on. Great goal at the end, by the way, if you didn't just see Kunga with a fantastic finish. But we'll talk about it in a second because, of course, our good friend John Morrissey has already talked about it for you.
Is your USL League One champion, and they got there with a dominant 3-0 win against Spokane over the weekend, in which they didn't allow a shot on target and gave the Velocity just 9 touches in their box. This dominant defensive effort began in the press. Omaha has been a strong counter-pressing and pressing team all season, and those tenets were on display in the final. You're going to watch this sequence here mere seconds into the match where Omaha moves into attack mode. They start somewhat narrow, switch a ball over to Joe Gallardo at right wing back, but watch as Lagos Kunga, the winger marked in black, and Max Schneider, that midfielder in the neon green, slide over to support Gallardo, not only providing offensive outlets, but setting their side up to eventually counterpress and keep the ball in a dangerous position. Kunga here tries to backheel. It's a clever play, but it doesn't come off. As soon as the turnover happens, Schneider is stepping up, making sure that Spokane doesn't have an easy route to exit their defensive zone. That pressure is consistent, and Omaha used it all night. Now, at the same time, there's always a man back, making sure that Omaha maintains their shape. In this case, it's Pedro Dolabella, the all-league midfielder who led this team in goals. He comes up, makes that late charge, and he's going to be able to force Spokane into a sloppy back pass that ultimately leads to a shot. This sequence, in about a minute, will lead to a corner kick that puts Omaha on top, never to lose that edge. Now, in the high press and pure defensive phase of the game, Omaha tended to use a 3-4-3, but they were willing to push Dolabella up in certain situations against a midfielder or to charge at a center back. In this case, he's moving above the attacking line, going at a defender, and forcing a turnover. You're going to see Omaha continue to push the ball back, getting attempt on goal, and it's just a brilliant offense, brilliant defense combined into one. In this case, it's Charlie Ostrom. He's that man like Dolabella in the first case who's sitting back and making sure that Omaha has somebody to step up and blow up the play. He gets the turnover, the play ends, and Omaha is on their way to a title.
Just like you said, I mean, just so much there that happened. That was just an absolute treat to watch. The attack was fun. Early goal, I think, for Union Omaha really settles things. And I think just about everybody said when the first goal went in was like, congratulations, Union Omaha, on your on your championship, which was a little rude to Spokane. But then you see what Union Omaha does impress. You see what they do defensively, and they don't allow a single shot on target. They only allow 2 shots total. There were probably a couple that could have been shots, but definitely did not even come close to the goal. That scorekeeper weren't being kind. It was just such a dominating performance from Union Omaha to earn their right to the top of the table for a full season.
No, I think you saw it from the opening sequences of the game, right? Like Union Omaha didn't really adjust their style, I would say. They came out, played Dom Casciato ball, shut down everything that Spokane did by sticking to the principles, sticking to that formation. I tried to illustrate what we were seeing in the press of aggression but stability, always having that man who was kind of the second layer who could fly up in the counter press if needed, but was there as an extra layer of defense. That gave them the set pieces. They never stopped executing. You punctuated with the Kunga goal. Like, absolutely couldn't have written it better if you're a Union Omaha.
Yeah, and they broke their own record that they set from the 2021 final of the earliest goal scored in a USL 1 final. That previous one was scored in the 7th minute. This goal from Max Schneider was scored in the 3rd minute, and it really just kind of set the tone for this entire match. And it caps off what has not only been a really brilliant regular season and playoffs for Union Omaha, but they've now set the highest ever ELO rating in league history as per my own ranking system, and as crowned themselves, this is the best USL 1 team the league has ever seen.
Phil is just having a blast.
I'm crafting the first skeet, I think they're called. So anyways, we'll get to that more. So Dom and the boys, I think what was so cool about this was this ended up being, because like, let's be real, this wasn't the most like competitive final, and credit to Spokane for making it here, because none of us believed in them. I think like that is not an overstatement to say that like we did not think that they would make it that far. It is a credit to them that they did, and this became sort of a party celebrating the season of Union Omaha. Like in many ways, like the players, you could see there was like a huge outpouring of emotion after the first goal. Like the whole team, just like huge celebrations over in that corner. And then the Dolabella goal, kissing the giant jersey drawing of Meshach Jerome that was there, like behind the goal. And then the like it has been said, the Kunga goal just being a bit of the exclamation point. There was something cool about this being sort of a carnival for Union Omaha and their fans to celebrate what has been just a wonderful season for them, and capped off, I think, rightfully with with a USL League One title. That being said, I mean, I think the questions maybe need to start being asked of like, is the level just like too high? Like, does Union Omaha need to take the step? And with the questions around some of the championship teams, I mean, I don't know. Like, can Omaha make the? I would like to see them make the jump, but
we made it one day without a promotion relegation on this podcast.
No, today is not that day.
No, honestly, it's a fair question. I also think that what Union Omaha did, well, this is something I've kind of said on a lot of podcasts in the last couple of days, talking about this final. How Union Omaha built their success is something that Peter Marlette spoke to us about a couple years ago now, which was, he said it started off with finding houses for these guys. And it's not just about, we're getting the 5 bachelors who are just out of college and who are willing to live together. It's about getting the family man who has 2 kids and a wife, right? It's the person who has 3 dogs and 2 cats because that's their entire life whenever they leave training facility, and finding them homes, right? They go after every single kind of guy and do everything that they can to make them feel comfortable. They don't exclude themselves from anyone. They do anything they can to bring these guys in. And honestly, it's replicatable for the rest of the league to bring those kind of guys in if they simply put in the effort / finances attached to it. And we'll talk about it later, finances being the key contributor here. But you see other teams like Greenville and like Ford Madison and other clubs like that that are really good about accommodating these guys. And they are the ones that were pushing for championships this year. For Union Omaha, though, I don't know about the Misha Jerome. I think I saw this with the that they are retiring his number, that the number 2 will never be worn again. Granted, I don't know if that was their owner being extremely drunk, because I think they were having like an open bar every bar they went to, which was crazy. But I think I did see that. And, if that just doesn't tell you what they think, like how much they thought about Jerome and, how much they think about him and how much he means to that club. I mean, the fans rallied behind him, kissing the armband with the 2 on it, going and kissing the jersey. It was just stuff like that where it felt like there was no choice but Union Omaha to win it all.
No, and I maybe want to push back on the idea that they like ran the season and romped to the title in this completely dominant fashion. Like, that game against Richmond in the first round was 1-0 and tight throughout. They trailed against Greenville for a stretch. They're absolutely, they proved over the course of the season, over the course of the playoff tournament, that they are the best team in the league. But I don't think we should look down upon the quality of the rest of League One and what was a very strong year. Ironically, if we're talking best team ever, this season's Northern Colorado has the best expected goal difference in the history of League One by a margin of 12. They were at plus 32 expected goal difference versus Omaha at plus 20. Like, that's a pretty big gap, and unfortunate for NOCO in context. But yeah, take nothing away from Omaha, who executed, did the thing when it mattered, just absolutely tremendous on the field, off the field, the supporters, every element of it is a showcase for the league.
Just one thing with just kind of all of it, I suppose, and this is another thing kind of talked about. Richmond, by the way, they were like way too good to be the number 8 seed. I understand form and you have to win and all that kind of stuff, but when you look at what they have on like what they have on paper and like what they put out there,
they're the 7th best team in the league. I mean, they're like maybe pushing Knox for 6.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're talking about balance on coming into things, Spokane would have been your worst team in the league coming into the playoffs. You probably would have taken a couple teams outside the playoffs above them because they were winless in their last 7, right? It was just one of those Richmond teams that it felt like if they got hot, they'd be really good. But I mean, I think you saw the talent level of Union Omaha. And just how deep it goes. And something that was kind of asked on Soccer Down Here today, and I kind of wanted to pose this question to you. Union Omaha only had one player in the all league team, and that was Pedro Dolabella. Do you think that there should have been another Union Omaha player to make it? Because I was looking at the all league team and I found it hard to put someone else in. And it just kind of goes to this point that I have that Union Omaha isn't filled with all league players. They are just a fantastic team, just an overall team, just absolutely fantastic. And maybe they're all like third team all USL, if we're being honest. Like they are right there. They're all fantastic.
No, I mean, I was kind of playing the same game because there was pushback from people in Omaha. I know our friend, Alex Ashton, he's in the comments right now saying Joe Gallardo got stiffed. That's a reasonable argument to make. I think the thing with Union Omaha is they very much spread the love with scoring. Like it or not, no matter the position, it tends to be guys with a lot of goals get into the all-league teams. Omaha, by virtue of the fact that they're a little bit more systematic, they rotated quite a bit in every area of the pitch, missed out on that front. But I think Gallardo would have been a good shout. I'm a big fan of Marco Milanese at that left center back spot. Kunga, in terms of like doing the most amazing things, like just once per game, has a shout. So lots of guys that could have been there. I'm not going to quibble too much with the all league choices.
It's a classic Lowry situation of El Paso was often in that situation of like really good team under Lowry, but not breaking the into the all league team all that often because of the spread, right? Like in that systematic approach, like you said. So it's funny to me that the Casciato stuff is maybe a similar approach.
Before we move on from the final, and again, all the flowers to Union Omaha, but I kind of have to ask the question, how does Spokane move on from this? What can you build off of this run? Can you rely on bringing back this defensive core that got you on this run? Or is there a massive retooling because they just could not seem to buy a goal down the stretch?
I mean, the playoffs are fake. Like any team that looks at a 3-game run and thinks this is our season, this is absolutely what's going to bear out over the next Phoenix. 22, 34 games. Yes, that feels like a very foolhardy approach. Not to say you can't learn something. Obviously, Spokane down the stretch leaned into that Marcelo Lage, Cameron Miller center back pairing that feels like it can at least be a base going forward. I think Jack Denton nailed down the fact that he is the guy in the central midfield, probably next to Andre Lewis. Anwar Pelaez's rise up at the striker spot feels like a big deal. Spokane really was a team that like settled on a formation and found some core pieces late in the year after experimentation and after some injuries. So it was a learning process, but it's not something that you have to feel pot committed to going into 2025.
Yeah, and the big thing that you're going to want to avoid if you're Spokane is to not have this turn into what happened from Chattanooga 2022 to Chattanooga 2023. You saw that Chattanooga team in the playoffs in 2022 make a run to the final and lose to Tormenta in that final. But then when they came back in 2023, they were well out of the playoff picture or before the final month of the season. And it seemed like they lost all of the momentum from that. You'll want to really
kind of players,
and all the players, but they'll really want to try and keep the core together and move forward into next season. Because if we're gonna be brutally honest, towards the end of the year, they didn't win a game in the playoffs from when they began the playoffs to the end of the regular season. It was a win over Central Valley Fuego. The 15th game of a 22-game regular season was the last time Spokane won a game prior to the postseason. So it wasn't like they were running into the playoffs on scintillating form.
Well, kind of bringing up Central Valley Fuego, let's go ahead and move on to the other League One news, where the Fire and Ice Derby depart USL League One at the same time. We sort of touched on the Northern Colorado situation last week when we were talking about Memphis. And by the way, if you want to hear kind of our thoughts on the Memphis situation, there's a standalone video from on our YouTube channel and on goals.tv of just Memphis. If you want to hear that, we're not going to rehash that conversation. But Fuego happened around the same time as Northern Colorado. We found out about everything going on with Northern Colorado. And then about 24 hours later, some Central Valley Fuego fans were like, wait a minute, why are they ripping up our seats? And then a couple hours later, it was, oh, yeah, you got kicked out of the league. Sorry about it. And it was legit a one sentence blurb at the end of we are getting rid of Northern Colorado. Like we've done all this different kind of stuff. There is a lawsuit, yada, yada, yada. Oh, by the way, Fuego's gone too. Bye. I have a couple of questions about this, though. Is this a good move for the USL? These are two owners that clearly are not holding up the professional standard in the league. These were ownerships that were not taking enough action to uphold those standards. Is kicking these teams out the right move, or is there another approach that the league should have taken to maintain these clubs staying within League One?
If you're USL League One, there's kind of no other option. Taking over these teams on an operational basis, making them a going financial concern for the USL, given their realistically not very viable financial situation, just isn't on the cards at the league level. So if you can't find another buyer, they are not meeting the standard. I think they have to go. That doesn't make it less tragic. That doesn't make it better off for the fans in these cities. But if you're run by ownership groups that are constantly being sued, that constantly aren't going to be paying their players, are courting controversy on and off the field, it's ultimately better for the league to move past that, try to solidify around what looks like a very strong expansion class, and just move on.
Yeah, it's a tough situation that you never want to see teams disappear, or it's a loss of jobs for the players, for the coaching staff, the fans lose that. But the league does absolutely have to take a stand on if these teams are upholding their professional standards, if they're meeting the requirements of having a team, and especially if you're bringing in new teams that are going to continuously raise the bar. You look at Hearts of Pine up in Portland as one example. It makes it tougher and tougher for these teams to continue justifying their spot within the league if they're not going to be held to the same standards as everyone else. What I think is going to make it really challenging is now we have a very big gap in USL 1 of travel. You have teams who are out on the West Coast, and then a huge expanse of no clubs until you get to Omaha.
Yeah, I think the thing that we were trying to decipher from this was, number one, like the Fuego thing in general was just so weird, because I don't know that we've ever come across a league and a club mutually agreeing to part ways. That's really wild. And the fact that it was additionally, like they hit them with the additionally at the end of the press release, which was very unceremonious, I guess you would say. Obviously, I think they probably, given the sort of potential legal stuff of the Northern Colorado situation, I'm sure like the less that they like, there's probably less said about that because of that, I guess, like the fact that it may play out in court. With the Central Valley stuff, it seems like, I don't know. Does that mean that Central Valley's headed to NISA? Like what's Fuego's deal if they mutually parted ways? The
what I'm kind of gathered from boots on the ground is that it seems like they're going to go semi-pro. That feels, that seems, that's what the boots on the ground say. I'm not fully convinced that NOCO doesn't go to NISA, because their owners seem just so stubborn and arrogant that they were like, no, we're a professional team. We're a professional team. We'll show you. We'll go to the most professional league we know. And just go to the only place that will accept them, which is NISA, unless they could end up being in the National Soccer League, which that could be entertaining in the least. But that seems what it is Fuego might be going semi-pro. All I know is that all of their players have been informed that they are free agents. Which this is something that people who are a little bit more into the weeds of the CBA need to tell me. I've read the CBA. I'm not a lawyer. It all seems like gibberish to me. But what it kind of seems like to me is that when these players sign, because it's a CBA, their contract is protected through the USL Players Association. So if the team leaves league or leaves the USL, their contract is void. So they're all free agents anyway, but it seems like with Fuego, there is no "you're coming with us" at all.
I mean, wouldn't be the first time. Fuego just kind of resets it after the season. So, and when you look at this entire situation, just kind of at the macro level, it's two clubs that hopefully wouldn't be allowed in today. And we talk about like the pro league standards, what allows a league to be sanctioned. You need to have an owner that's worth about $10 million. I kind of wrote about this in my Substack piece today. $10 million to run a soccer team at this level is not a lot of money. And net worth to get it up to that level, any accountant worth their salt can get you pretty close to that if you're sufficiently wealthy. But on salaries, staff fees, renting your stadium, travel alone, that's taken up the entirety of the bare minimum right off the bat. Then you throw in that these organizations clearly were operated by people who weren't up to ethical standards, what you would want out of business people in the league. It's something that hopefully the USL has gone through the soul searching and realized we need to vet this better. We need to be more discerning in who we're allowing to join up. It seems like that is the case. It seems like these were two unique situations given how things changed post-COVID for the league. But yeah, it doesn't hurt any less for the teams involved.
I guess where I just kind of, for me, it's good on the USL for taking a stand, right? There is a part of me that kind of looks over at Charlotte and is just giving it bad side eye, like, could you not have done this years ago? But granted, Charlotte, barring Enzo having that battle with through the USLPA, Charlotte did pay their players and uphold other professional standards. It was just other issues along the way, but we'll kind of see if this has any other kind of lasting effect going forward with other ownership issues. We already kind of got in the chat of Garland. Yes, that is the next thing. USL Dallas Garland is around. And I'm going to go ahead and immediately push back on some people saying, I can't believe they're putting a team where MLS is. That's a bad idea. They play in Fresno. Or
Frisco.
Frisco. I was right. I'm thinking about
that is the extreme suburbs of Dallas.
Yeah.
Far west suburbs of Dallas.
Texas is huge, man. You wouldn't get it. But like they play in Frisco, which is also really far from Dallas.
This is like way closer to downtown. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is kind of not the same. This, if anything, this is going to be more Dallas than Dallas. I don't even consider these two to be the same place in the slightest.
It's more in the neighborhood of the Cotton Bowl and Dallas Trinity, to be fair.
Yeah, very true. I just think like this is almost like the USL Championship being, I think it was Roswell, Georgia, which that's gone dormant, so I guess that's not happening.
Well, no, we've seen plenty of expansion teams just kind of sit on the back burner like this, and by God, they're happening. I swear.
New Orleans is going to happen.
Wilmington is going to happen.
But I mean, for me, Roswell, Georgia, and Garland, Texas is kind of the same. Yeah, there is an MLS team there, but depending on if you want to deal with traffic, it's kind of a far drive and a difficult drive that if you don't want to make it, I totally get it. I think this is a good deal for the USL personally.
Well, I think it's a fruitful comparison to look at Roswell against Dallas. Roswell doesn't have an owner. Roswell, they just kind of went in with the city of Roswell, Georgia, and said, hey, we're really happy about trying to bring a soccer stadium here to host women's team and a men's team. And then they were like hoping to bring in investors by all indications. Garland has the money. Garland has a plan to be in an actual facility for 2027. They're closer to downtown. And the Metroplex, the Dallas area, is really quite sparse, or rather not very densely populated. It's quite spread out. The population centers are all over the board. This is a team that if they position themselves well, they market themselves well against a somewhat conservative kind of an FC Dallas organization that's never really got their hooks into that community in a big way. There's a lot of potential here to do a great job.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas itself is just huge. I mean, if you're looking at just where FC Dallas play up in Frisco, you have North Texas who play over near Arlington, halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth. Fort Worth is out here. You have Dallas Trinity. So there's so much like expansiveness that they could have within this city to just kind of really build out the team. I'm also going to be really interested to see how Texahoma and at least their start, how that kind of fits in here as well, especially when you kind of compare it to the rest of USL in the landscape. But yeah, I mean, wishing everything the best of luck to Dallas Garland, and I'm excited to see at least what the branding and how the team's going to kind of market themselves.
Yeah, it's always interesting in these groups, like who's involved and like the folks, the founders. It does seem it's basically like private equity, which like, I mean, that's essentially what's going on in soccer these days. Like for like, especially in the lower leagues, like private equity is mostly getting involved. So it'll be interesting to see how they connect with it. Cause I think it was light on the details in terms of like stadium and all of that sort of thing, and it was like more details to come about how they're going to like develop a community focused club and all that stuff. So I'll be really interested to hear like the strides they make with Garland and like what this partnership with the city like truly means in terms of tangible benefits for the club, and if it means like stadium or facility, whatever, like with them getting going. But it seems like pretty I think a well put together expansion bid, and we'll see what the and I think targeted well. I think we're going to see more of this in USL, like going into areas that they think are underserved potentially by MLS, or maybe not fully. You know, we saw them sort of testing it with Dallas Trinity with the Super League. So I think there's going to be more of this where in areas where they think that MLS hasn't exactly cracked the code, they may try to do something a little bit better. Yeah.
By the way, speaking of Texoma, can someone give me an actual answer? What state are they in?
Both. The
Are
stadium,
they on the line?
The stadium will be half on one side and half on the other side of the river.
No, I think they're in Sherman, Oklahoma. Sherman, Texas. Don't quote me on that, but I'm like 95% sure.
Can we have
it's Sherman, Texas
in the chat? Yeah.
Listen, if we can really, I need the USL really pony up the big bucks, and we can have a real proper Four Corners FC and just plop them right there on the monument. Put the stadium down.
What's real quick on the Texoma versus Dallas thing? Texoma and Sherman is a city with about 150,000 in the metro. Garland alone is 250,000 people within Dallas, one of the biggest cities in America. Kind of the delineation of why one is aiming for League One and why the other has the aspirations to be in the second division.
Speaking of the second division, why don't we just go ahead and talk about our USL Championship final? How we got here. I mean, listen, Juan Tejada is he only scores big goals, but not to be outdone by the big man between the sticks, Christian Herrera, with some incredible stops to keep Las Vegas off of the scoreboard. On the other side, you get Rhode Island. They go to Indy. They go to Louisville. They go to Charleston. They do not care. They get a decisive 2-1 victory in one of the most exciting matches I have watched in a long time. What you have down here on the graphic, if you are someone who's watching on the YouTube or you are watching later, these are the most recent formations. The big one is Noah Fuson playing at right wing back for Rhode Island. I don't know if Quizera is going to be back.
Will be back. He'll be back.
He will be back. So this means, oh no, you have to drop your 2023 Golden Boot winner for an international player. It must really suck to be Rhode Island. So that's probably going to be your biggest change, is you're going to change out Fuson for Dikwa, and then Dikwa for Quizera. Other than that, this is kind of what you can expect come Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. local or 10 a.m. local time. Brunch and footy. It doesn't get better than this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we gotta talk about the conference the conference final games rather, to kind of set the table. Like, that Rhode Island Charleston game was a testament to how good Rhode Island has been down the stretch. I think they've given up 7 goals in their last 9 games. They didn't even let the Battery get to 10 shots. Everything you saw in terms of the defensive principles was clicking. I thought the difference in the press was somewhat fascinating. A lot more of Fuson kind of dropping down towards a more midfieldy spot, a little bit more zonal against Lou City, in a way that denied the channels, denied touches to Taylor Davila. Whereas what you saw against the Battery was Albert Dikwa pretty fiercely man-marking Aaron Malloy, just getting in his face, making sure he was never able to pick his head up and find those passes that typically make him so special. Obviously, it comes down to the physicality early on as well, and I think there's no better testament to that than the throw-in play that ends up scoring the goal. And from there, like, seeing the game out, yes, there's the Torres goal, which, ridiculous. He's a magician. Excited to see him next season. But everything about Rhode Island sitting back, defending, they didn't feel like conceding in that. And against Charleston, no one else can say that. So really impressive end-to-end stuff.
And Rhode Island continues to start games off on the right foot. Of their last 9 games that they've scored a goal in, 8 of those games, they scored the first goal in that one. And it was so crucial for this game to set the tone early and get that first goal against Charleston, and then make Charleston go on the attack here in this conference final. And I think that's going to be a key for this Cup final, that if Rhode Island can get the opening goal against the Switchbacks, it puts them in a lot of control over this game, and it could be very well the goal that carries them off to winning a trophy.
I like truly was taken aback by how fluid Rhode Island looked against a Charleston team that's been so good about just making people look out of sorts, like, all season. Like, they get people out of shape. They're the ones who typically are, like, getting people on the back foot. And yeah, Rhode Island was on it from the first whistle. They were the better side. Like, and I apologize to all the Charleston folks who listen to the show, because I truly thought that this was the year for you guys to do it. It was so rare that teams made you look like this. But yeah, Rhode Island just it's clicked. They are like a classic case of a team that is getting hot at the right time, all that sort of stuff. And I do just want to give, like, an extra special shout out to Noah Fuson, just because I know I've waxed lyrical about him on the show before. He was an absolute terror for Rhode Island down that left-hand side. And yeah, his goal is like one that many people probably do not take on, because it's from a tight angle. It's going to take something extremely special to beat Grinwis from there, and he puts it exactly in, like, the one spot where it's just not savable. There's really nothing he can do. So much power, so much confidence. and against like a fight back that did come from Charleston, obviously the Torres goal. But like you said, John, they just limited so much of what Charleston did that I think this Rhode Island team is going to carry like a lot of confidence into the final. Not to say that Colorado Springs don't come in with momentum of their own.
I would like to put out a personal thank you to Juan de Torres for scoring that free kick goal, for allowing my horrible free kick take earlier from Charleston to not look as bad. Thank you. Also, William Lamb put it in the chat, seeing Nick Marcanic tears despite the loss was so emotional to watch. I was getting choked up watching him sob on the sideline. I was like, no, dude, like, what? No, I can't have this. I'm really sad now. I was really pumped about watching this match, and now I'm just devastated. It was.
There was so much of we talked about, like, there was the like storybook feel to Marcanic's season where, like, if he could cap off a golden boot and a USL championship final win, like, there's just something poetic about it. And it, you know, with him going on to greener pastures, like, it just would have put such a, you know, a nice, neat ending to his time in the league. And I think it also shows just how it, you know, sometimes people can think of USL as like a stepping stone or a league that is like a route on the way. But if you think that this doesn't mean something gigantic to the fans and the players who partake, like, that is all the evidence you need that this is a league and a competition that people take extremely seriously and for good reason.
Also, speaking of, I meant to bring up when I brought up the Juan de Torres goal. I saw a couple of people kind of giving crap to Coque Vegas on that. Where Juan de Torres is, you're kind of in a weird spot, especially with Charleston chasing the game, where I think just about every goalkeeper is expecting that ball to be dropped onto the penalty spot or between the penalty spot and the 6-yard box. So he's playing a lot more of aggressive line to come capture that ball or at least like punch it away. And the fact that Juan de Torres went for goal was shocking of itself and put it what appeared to be bar down. It's a wonder strike. And there were some people who kind of see where it lands and say that should be catching practice for Coque. It really isn't, because there's no reason for anybody to assume he's going to shoot from there. It was just, he took his chance, and just like the Noah Fuson goal, where he has one place to put that ball, and he did. And it's something that most people don't attempt, but he did. I think that if you are a Rhode Island fan, you're probably not worried about that happening against Colorado Springs, of like, he's just going to miss the easy free kick. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I wanted to talk about Colorado Springs on how we got there as well. I mean, it was 1-0, but Christian Herrera kept it from being 2-1 the other direction. I mean, we're going to talk about Juan Tejada and how he only scores important goals. He just cannot stop himself. But Christian Herrera had 2 insane saves at the doorstep to keep them in this match, let alone win it. Just awesome.
No, he's someone that was really given the reins in goal for them all season. And I mean, he's lived up to it. He's a hulking guy, like absolutely gigantic. Is he 6'7"? Am I getting that right?
6'7", and okay, he had one play, and I meant to clip it, where he had a ball roll in, like, he did a ball roll in the box where there was like 2 guys running at him and just slipped by him. He does not play like a 6'7" goalkeeper. He's so good.
And he's been vital for this team. He's leading the playoffs in goals prevented. On the slide, Colorado Springs got pretty heavily outplayed in terms of expected goals by Orange County. They only put up 0.9 XG against Vegas. They're not exactly playing at top form right now in a lot of ways, but Herrera is making up the difference. I thought this game against Las Vegas was a fascinating one because it was really a match where Las Vegas dictated the tempo, dictated the style. What I did like from the switchbacks was they never let up from the defensive aggression. They were keeping a relatively mid to high back line throughout the game, even when they had the lead and were seeing it out. They knew better than to give Ngondo and Noel space between the lines. Did it result in what they would have wanted in terms of the underlying stats? No. But they were looking very sharp on the counterattack. They had their opportunities. They flexed that depth off the bench. There were aspects of that game that you have to feel good about if you're James Chambers. And when you've got Herrera in the form he's in, that matters a ton in playoff competition.
Especially if they're going to be entering this cup final with 4 shutouts in their last 5 games played.
Yeah, I have to feel for Vegas a little bit because Herrera really did. I mean, I thought they equalized like that. That is how good of a save that late save was, because I thought it was a goal. Like I was already like, oh, here we go, headed to extra time, like in Colorado. And so absolutely unbelievable save. He's in great form. And like I would say switchbacks game management was not quite as strong as Rhode Island's. Obviously it's apples and oranges to a certain extent, but switchbacks trying to see that game out got put under a lot of pressure by Lights. They ultimately bend but don't break. So I think it's an exciting spot for the final in terms of it being at Widener. It is like, it looked gorgeous on the broadcast. I know that's not like why teams make it, but like it will be absolutely like stunning on CBS for the final as well. I'm hoping Rhode Island have got out to Colorado and are training there this week for adaptation purposes. I've seen in the chat the like altitude concerns. I'm sure Rhode Island are probably training out there. But yeah, it's set up to be quite the occasion on national TV for the final, and I really can't wait.
So before we get into the game itself, what do we think about the 12 time? Because like obviously that's 10 a.m. local. It's necessary because it raises the platform on CBS, but it's a little bit tough.
I think it is tough for the fans and for the players, but I also think that for the league, it's an absolute no-brainer. When I worked at a bar, basically, what would happen is it was 11 a.m. local time for us, 12 p.m. Eastern, and basically bosses will be like, turn on the football channels. CBS is the football channel, right? They're going to turn it on, set it, forget it until they close the bar that night. If sports are on it, they're going to keep it on there. They're going to put every channel with sports on. You're going to get a lot of accidental viewers who are getting ready for Big Ten football, right? I think that if you're the USL, at the very least, you're going into it. And if this goes to penalties, people are turning on the game for, college football, and they get a penalty shootout. I think it's a no-brainer from the league. That said, for the players, it does suck. I mean, James Chambers said it does put a damper on things. I totally understand, but the league does not say no to that opportunity.
For reference on the CBS schedule that day, so they'll have this final at noon on CBS, and then at 3:30 will be the Penn State Minnesota game, and then at 8 o'clock that night will be the NWSL final on CBS as well. So at least from CBS's perspective, they are giving soccer at least its show on the network. There's a college football game that has to be put in between it, but it is at least showcasing soccer in the United States on a major over-the-air network that people are able to access.
Yeah, I totally get the concerns about the time. I will say to Jonathan in the chat, me and John were there when you were tailgating, making eggs for everybody at Oakland's national TV game. So I'm just saying it's doable. I think like in general, it's it doesn't have sort of the big maybe primetime feel, obviously, but if we wanted the primetime feel, we'd be on a much smaller platform. So yeah. I think it's worth the trade. And I think all in all, it's going to be tough with the game, particularly being at 9 a.m. in the West Coast. I would say there's probably some issues with like having overlap with some European games as well. Like we may lose some of the like potential audience in that way. But it is worth it to get on CBS like that. I think that's the name of the game. And yeah, you just have to trust that hopefully as the platform grows, as they grow on CBS and all that stuff, then maybe there's an improved time slot next year. Who knows?
When we get into the game, one thing that I saw, by the way, with this last match of Las Vegas versus Colorado Springs that I never really paid attention to before, but I really saw it, was Las Vegas could not seem to hit a free kick in the slightest. And Hugo Faru actually kind of confirmed some stuff on the ball just straight up travels farther. It still does. It's just like Coors effect with the Rockies. The ball just travels farther and it feels lighter. Where I'm only bringing this up because if it goes to penalties, that's going to be a huge impact on a team who has never taken penalties at the altitude. That's a big deal. But the question I have for you guys, is there even a chance that this gets to penalties with as hot as Rhode Island's playing, or can Christian Herrera and co keep them at bay?
I mean, if I'm going to take the Colorado Springs route here of like what formula gets them a result in this game, they've got to take their chances and be able to turn Rhode Island over before they can get back, before they can engage in the counter press. If you're able to, like, there was an example early in the Las Vegas game where Ronaldo Damas kind of drops in, making this dummy run, drifting rightward, and Zach Zandy from the pivot loops around him, cuts through the channel. He scores, but it's called offside. If you can find opportunities like that, kind of get those unexpected runners before Connor Smith gets that team into the defensive shape, that's going to be one way to do it. You've got to avoid mistakes at the back as well. We've seen Rhode Island kind of beat you in two ways. They can be physical. They can dominate on set pieces. Like, wouldn't surprise me to see Frank Nadarce on the score sheet again in that route. At the same time, with Quizera back and Fuson, Paravo and him kind of doing what they do in the left channel, you have to stay organized. You have to like let Matt Mahoney lead that back line. If they score early, I think that bodes well for them. They're a team that's confident defensively. If they don't have to overextend, it helps them considerably. But yeah, I mean, it's a tall task against a team as hot as Rhode Island right now.
Ryan?
Yeah, I would just kind of echo what John's been saying, and also remember the history of just teams in the USL Cup final. For the first 8 Cup finals they had since 2011, the home team won each of those games. I know in recent history, we're now seeing 3 out of 4 go the way of the away team, but Colorado Springs, for a very good reason, they were one of the best teams at home this year in the Western Conference. I think only New Mexico had a better point total than Colorado Springs did. Play to the home field advantage and just point to that Rhode Island team's coming from a much lower elevation to where they are now that I think could be enough to be a slight advantage and difference in this game. Colorado Springs is one of the toughest places to go into and get a result.
Yeah, I think Colorado Springs' best route, along with what John said, is like where they had a lot of success against Vegas was that early ball out wide, and they found a lot of success. And the one way you can potentially get at this Rhode Island team is because Quizera, Nodarce, Fuson, Heravo get so involved, like higher up the field. You could get into those wide areas and start to run at that back three. Now, the back three of Rhode Island was very strong against Charleston, and I think we have to give them credit as well. That being said, like when you get guys like Damas, Tejada, Enriquez running at you, like there is the potential for it to get bad and get out of shape. So it will be really, really, I think, important for Rhode Island to not get maybe drawn too high up the field to the point where they can't stop switchbacks inevitably looking to hit them on the break like that. And and looking to get in behind. So that's the one big like kind of glaring thing. I think when you look at other areas just across like Rhode Island's midfield, I think they have an advantage like through the center of the park on paper. Obviously, you don't know what'll happen on the day. And with the form that JJ Williams and Noah Fuson are in, they can really cause trouble for switchbacks. If it goes into, I think like the elevation conversation really starts to impact if it does go into extra time, because I do think Rhode Island, regardless of any conditioning they're doing this week and adapting to conditions and all of that, by the time you've played 120 minutes, that any sort of adaptation is going to probably go out the window, and it will maybe come down to just conditions. But yeah, I think on paper, you can't really doubt the fact that Rhode Island just had a really, really tough route to the final and find themselves here because they've been the better team against really, really good teams. And switchbacks have a little bit of a point to prove, I think, in showing that they're not here because they like lucked out in their path to the final.
I just can't help but wonder if Colorado Springs also knows the fact that if they can hold out for that first 60, 70 minutes, that especially with the early time, right, trying to get used to everything, the extra adrenaline, that they can hold on for that first 60, 70 minutes, that they can't just outlast Rhode Island and just beat them down for the last 20. Where there's almost a question, and this was kind of brought up in the chat, of do you start a Justin Dillon and then bring Damas in at the very end for him just to outpace you? Because at that point, Rhode Island's going to be absolutely exhausted. I know it's a big risk, but it's something absolutely to consider.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. I think we're underrating that Rhode Island is a team that has finished games very strongly. I tend to be someone who's skeptical of like they scored X amount of goals in the first 15. But Rhode Island, I want to say, had 17 goals in the final 15 minutes of games this year. That matters quite a bit. Like, there's something about the way Connor Smith is able to like set up the periodization of how they're pressing, save those legs, and make sure they're finishing strong. I'm also a little bit of an altitude. Like, I think the altitude matters, but I think it can be overstated to a certain degree. Like, Colorado Springs didn't have the best road record. They were pretty much at par for that level of club, or rather home record. You knew what I meant. Like, Rhode Island comes into this game for me as the favorite. And I think even if you see a switch like Dylan for Damas, you're playing into Rhode Island's hands in a way. Like, a team that comes in and is so hell-bent on game planning, trying to switch things up for the sake of change and for the sake of cleverness, isn't going to be able to execute. I don't think Dylan makes a lick of difference, frankly, in terms of trying to bully that Rhode Island back three. Neither he nor Damas is going to do it, so why lean into that as a strategy? And I think that really is kind of encapsulating how I see this matchup going, right? Like, Rhode Island has answers for almost everything Colorado Springs does. I have a real tough time seeing Aiden Rocha handling the job on that right side. There are just too many factors that lean towards Rhode Island going there and getting the win for me.
Yeah, if we're going to go through and do predictions now, I have Rhode Island winning this one. And I do think, as Racing Anchor says in the chat, I think they will get it done within 90 minutes of time, which I think is going to be absolutely crucial. Oh, as Sean was saying, with the number of goals that they've scored in the last 15 minutes of games, I think it's a really good possibility that we're going to see Rhode Island really flip the switch in the second half and really kind of ignite their form. They were very good. I was trying to count through all their individual stats right now, and dating back to June, they've scored 32 goals in the second half of games in that time frame. And especially if they can start the second half and get a goal before the 60th minute, I think that really sets the tone for that second 45. So I have Rhode Island winning this one as well and becoming the first expansion team to win the championships in Sacramento.
Yeah, I don't like. Here's the thing. I feel weird. I do feel weird that if we like across the board go for Rhode Island, because if you talked to me 2 weeks ago, I'd have been like, yeah, no way. Like they're just not built for this, right? And now I'm like convinced of Rhode Island. So I think I'll just go for switchbacks. One, I can make up ground. I only have a small gap to make up ground in the pick'em. I'm close. I can catch it. Can I catch John Kaler? Can we do the math on?
If this is a 25-point game, yeah.
And I've just carried over the same point total that I've been tracking all through the season.
If I lock it, does that have it? No. So I think I'll go for Colorado Springs. I think like there is something about this team that one, it feels like they have just like gotten it done most of the season. It's how they finished second in the West. They have home field advantage, and I think we haven't seen them necessarily get out of like second or third gear this playoff run yet. So I think they can hit another level and give Rhode Island a game. That being said, I really do think that Rhode Island is going to win. But
if you pick Rhode Island, Kaler picks Rhode Island. Think about Think about like, what if the Switchbacks clown us as champions? That's good PR.
Think about the memes.
Here's the opposite side of this. If I pick switchbacks, I have to deal with Kano. I know he's going to text me, and I don't want.
I'm getting such mixed messages from Rhode Island fans in the chat, by the way. Like, you can't have it both ways, guys. Like, you can't want bulletin board material and then question me. I'm trying to please everybody here.
I'm really stuck because there's a part of me that can see a real world where switchbacks win this. Like, I really, really can. When John Nelson asked me on Soccer Down Here who I thought was going to win, I sat there for probably 20 seconds without saying a word because I just did not know. I can't make myself pick. I'm hedging Rhode Island because every single forward on the team just seems to be scoring. I think that's going to be too much for Colorado Springs to handle. But Christian Herrera also seems to can do things that make no sense in stopping goals. I don't know. I'm going to say Rhode Island purely just so like Kano and co will be happy with me. All the ex-Legion guys will be happy. That's kind of what I'm rooting for.
They feel like the more confident team. They feel like the team in better form. It's a good pick.
Here's what I think will actually happen. I think it will be revealed that the West was actually just a simulation this year, was completely fake, and Rhode Island will be crowned champions simply because Colorado Springs switchbacks is merely a concept and not an actual thing.
The concepts of a club?
Yeah.
I will say if you and the odds may change by the time we get to Saturday, especially if they add in the 2 lift trophy at the end of it. But in the current Bet365 odds, if you look at just the 90-minute result, both teams are at 250 to win with a 340 at a draw at 90. So it's very even at the moment.
My odds machine put it at 48 switchbacks, 52 Rhode Island. So we're looking at a good match.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. I think it's going to go really well. This is where now that which, by the way, just unrelated note, the El Paso Locomotive has followed the USL show on Blue Sky. Just thought I'd bring that up. Anyway,
no relation to what we spoke about at the start of the show. The El Paso Locomotive was very well listening to this and heard our request.
Yep. EPLocomotivefc.bsky.social.
Don't forget about the fireworks. Lots of fireworks in 2025. Don't forget.
Identity theft is not a joke.
It always seems like when we do these podcasts, me and Phil just end up being like, man, El Paso and Birmingham are just the same team, huh? If I have to watch Kano lift a trophy after Dom lifts a trophy for Union Omaha, I'm just fully convinced that El Paso and Birmingham are just the same teams.
Birmingham Locomotive FC.
Yep. It'll be even better once Birmingham is forced into the West next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. The only thing is like El Paso ruined my wedding day. Thanks a lot, guys. Like you guys beat us on the day I got married. And I'm not gonna lie to you. It is a thought when I think about my anniversary. This is the day that El Paso beat us.
That was the Freaky Friday moment when our clubs became linked. Like that was when the union occurred. Not like a unionization. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, look, let's go ahead. Speaking of coaches, let's go ahead and talk about some new coaches that are in town on the USL side. Don't make the joke. Don't make the joke. Don't
I
make
know.
the joke.
Yeah.
Um,
Teeing up. Yeah.
where Tulsa gives Luke Spencer a promotion. He becomes the head coach of SC Tulsa, and Paul Maduka becomes the head coach of Phoenix Rising. We knew about Ka like a month ago, maybe, but that was whatever it was. We've known about that one for a while, but Luke Spencer getting the promotion after Sanchez also gets the promotion to go, I believe it was director of football, was a shocker to me.
Yeah.
Technical director. Okay. But it was a bit of a shocker to me that Spencer gets the promotion to head coach. But they obviously saw something throughout that entire year of him being the assistant that they really enjoyed. And I'm going to be interested to see what comes from that side. For Ka, his CV kind of speaks for itself at this point. He is a very, very good hire. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he changes or mends cultures at Phoenix Rising.
Yeah, I'm a fan of both hirings, just to put it out up front. In the Tulsa perspective, it's somewhat similar to what Colorado Springs just did, right? Where Stephen Hogan was the manager there in 2023. He steps up to kind of be more of a front office guy, and his assistant, James Chambers, takes over. We're talking about the Switchbacks as a finalist right now. Mario Sanchez and Luke Spencer kind of came to Tulsa as a group package, both of them with long tenures at Louisville City. They've got the shared DNA. They're going to use a pretty similar style you would expect. Spencer's someone a little bit closer to the playing career, which I think will help him with relations in a locker room that's seen a lot of change over the years. And Tulsa, I think, made some smart moves as well in terms of what they're doing with the roster. Like moving to a new era, but still keeping Johan Peñaranda around, bringing in a player in Khalil Ahmedkar that should be really impressive within the tactical format that Sanchez set up. So liking the early moves there. And then what more can you say about Pamudu Kal? Like the CV on this guy for a young manager is nothing but impressive. Took Pacific FC in the CPL to a title, and he's the all-time winningest manager at that club according to win percentage. He did very well in his loan season with North Texas and MLS Next Pro. And I think that's good experience on multiple levels. Like you're working with young players, you're developing young talent. And if you're a Phoenix team that is going to have Pop Marboy and Julio Doradioto back, that matters. That North Texas team was also very short passing oriented. They pressed well. They played a style that's somewhat reminiscent of how Phoenix sets out to play the game from top down. So I think he's a good leader to have in place moving into what ought to be a new era for Rising. So yeah, good stuff on both ends.
And especially with on Ka's front, he's been part of a new kind of coaching team here for Charlotte FC, who had one of the best defensive records in MLS this year. And he was learning under a coach of Dean Smith, who has over 1,000 games managed in his own career, and obviously a well-known figure across the English game. So to see Ka make the transition over to Phoenix Rising and just kind of breathe in a kind of breath of fresh air into what had been a kind of fractured fan base and team from this season, who just kind of got into the playoffs as the 8th seed. It seems like it's certainly a Phoenix Rising team who will turn things around in 2025. And then to speak to Luke Spencer within Tulsa, that's another team who this season was kind of on the outside of the playoff picture. They finished 4 points short. So it'll be very interesting to see how kind of Tulsa wants to return to getting into the playoffs with Luke Spencer at the helm, who I believe is our first ever former USL Cup final MVP to become a permanent manager within the league as well.
That yeah, I think the Ka hire is a nice break for Phoenix from this cycle that they got in of trying to hire the next like up and coming USL manager from within the league. Like they just kept doing this, like, oh, we're going to like identify these guys like from sort of within the known quantities of USL. So them branching out, finding a guy that is from a different ecosystem, from a different, like just has a different approach, all that sort of stuff, and has a proven track record. I think it's just a nice, like you said, Ryan, like a breath of fresh air for Phoenix. And it hopefully will start, hopefully Phoenix can start mending some of the fences that they've broken with the fan base over the last couple of years, because I think they've got some big work to do. And Ka obviously like building out this roster and adding to the pieces that they've got will be key. Luke Spencer, like we said, getting active like early in the transfer market, which I think, it for a team that has their manager moving into a front office position, they have to take advantage of that continuity to a certain extent and say like, okay, we already know what we kind of want to do. We've probably got a picture of players that we've been looking at and things. So them going out and getting Khalil El-Medkar, I think is a statement from Tulsa, because he is just a very, very solid player in USL, and I'm excited to see what he can do. That being said, what's key for Tulsa is Luke Spencer needs to start the season as their manager. That's like the key for Tulsa is make it out of the offseason with the same coach that you started the offseason with.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, we did have this conversation last year, Grant, with Gavin. He was already the coach there before, but I mean, it was like, wow, can you believe all these signings? Oh, there go all the signings.
Yeah. Man, a penny
And
for Charlie Adams thoughts.
Yeah. No, I think that's why you should be bullish about Tulsa, frankly. Like they showed last offseason, they're willing to actually put some money into this roster. What Mario Sanchez ended up with was this Frankenstein's monster of the kind of B tier guys that were for Blair Gavin, a couple of players that Sanchez himself brought in. There's going to be a lot more clarity to the build this offseason that ought to have Tulsa fans feeling pretty bullish on their chances.
Well, I'm excited to see how both of them end out.
Can I say one thing real quick, just to kind of address the elephant in the room for the terminally online among us? A fifth of USL coaches next season are going to be Black. That's amazing. Like the progress for the league that often struggled to get up to a number like that over time, you love to see it.
Yeah.
Also, okay, for also the terminally online, please read this statement, because the comment doesn't even make sense. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. If you have escaped the one letter app, stay that way. Just stay away. It's fine. I can't seem to leave because every now and then there's a good post to like blow it up your you know what.
Yeah.
It's fine. All right. So all that. It's pretty much all of the USL stuff. Is there any final USL thoughts from you guys?
Yeah.
Follow
I'll plug
EP
myself.
Locomotive FC on Blue Sky.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
not a self-plug, by the way.
I love the club.
Yeah. Go read my preview thing on the USL website. The more you read it, the more I assume I get a chance at doing it again. So we like that. Yeah, preview the title game.
Yes, please read that. Also read Back Four.
Yeah, that's free. So is the
That's
USL
free.
thing.
Yeah, check that out. Something I watched when I was watching the League One final It was very fascinating to me. If you watch the first goal, Brooks, it's an out swinging corner, and Brooks Thompson like stays right on his line the entire time, which is bizarre. And then I watched almost all the corners come in, and it looked like they were pretty much aiming for this top right hand corner of the box. And it looked like he was just setting himself up to be ready to face anything from that angle. And I don't know if it was we scouted that they do this on corners, or if it's what was he, 20, 22, 23? Young goalkeeper who was in the middle of a USL final, was just desperate not to concede and thus wasn't like coming to claim things. But it was fascinating watching such a conservative positioning from a goalkeeper on an outswinging corner. Not saying that first goal would have made a difference. It was put right on the corner of the 6-yard box, but it was just fascinating for me to see.
When I thought the marking setup on the part of Spokane was pretty disconnected as well. Like Derek Waldeck couldn't pick a spot on that first play. No one was committing up to who got that header on the first one? Was it Schneider? Yeah, no one went and tracked Schneider when he flashed to the kind of space in front of the near post. It was pretty much a rerun of the same setup for Omaha, and Spokane still didn't deal with it on the second bite at the apple. Yeah, I mean, not what you want to see. And that they've trained better than that behind the scenes, but something about the moment, the away game at Verna Stadium, just didn't come together.
Yeah. Any other USL thoughts for the night? No. All right. Well, how about just some final thoughts in general? Phil.
I tweeted about this, but my in-laws are here this week, and as a result, I got exposed to Paramount Plus TV shows, which
that tweet sent me, man.
I do not recommend. Tulsa King in particular was just like, I literally felt like my brain was exploding out of the back of my head. Anyways, it was pretty funny. Funny for a little bit. Do not expose. Prolonged exposure can have serious side effects.
He should. Sly Stallone might get appointed to a cabinet spot if he keeps working like this.
It's moving mad.
Yeah.
Ryan?
Yeah, if we're going to talk about sporting events being held this weekend at a very different time, the F1 race is in Las Vegas this week, and it always reminds me that this thing starts at 1 a.m. Eastern time because they want to have this race at nighttime and have it be all convenient for the Europeans. So a very long day if you start with the Premier League at 7:30 Eastern time in the morning and then end it at like 3 in the morning. For the F1 race. And I guess also go look up what Ferrari did for their quote unquote special suits this week. They wanted to have it seem like it was like dusted in the desert sand, but it honestly looks like they just faded it in the wash like 8 times over and over, and they're going to charge $200 for that shirt. So we'll see. But yeah, if you're watching F1 this weekend, there's a chance Max Verstappen will win his 4th world championship. So let's see what happens.
I am really bummed that we missed the opportunity for the USL championship final to be in Vegas the same weekend as F1. Just the potential crossover marketing was just was ripe, but it's a shame.
It would have been a blast. I mean, I don't know what the USL could have done with that, but it could have been
race to the
something.
final.
Lead in, just be like, the race will end, and then like a couple hours later, the game will kick off at whatever, like 7 a.m.
Make a wild promise that one of the drivers will be there at halftime and drive the car onto the pitch.
Love it.
And it's actually Jose Canseco back for another round of BP.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, I don't know. I checked out the new Dune show on HBO. Thought it was fine. I'm here for the vibe of space politics. So yeah, I guess check that out if you're into Dune. It's not as good as the movies, I'll tell you that. But hey,
I mean, yeah.
Sure.
yeah.
In my world of being at a tiny school, being the music guy, I'm also the audio engineer at the school now. In all of my free planning
What does
period,
that mean?
I mean, you've got tons of practical experience, so
yeah. Basically, they have bought a sound system, and they're like, "We have no idea how to make literally any of this work. So here's some chords, here's the system, put it together, balance it, fix it." And I was like, all right, here we go. And that's what I've been doing with my life, is setting up a full audio system for a tiny school. That's my life. But yay, that's what a show, what a time. And not gonna make any promises here, but be on the lookout later this week of a fun interview, hopefully to come out soon, that I haven't even told the guys on the show about.
Yeah, this is news to me.
there's confusion all around the panel at the moment.
It should be a good time. We hope you enjoy if we can get it worked out, but we will let you all know. But for the first time and the final time, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show. The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist Podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.